meeting to order. 2.1, approval of the agenda. Yes.
I see the agenda keeps switching back and forth. Where's the original 5.6?
Snowden. You go there.
I took it off at this time to receive guidance around personnel matters from the Board of Education in closed session today.
Okay, we can't keep it in closed session forever.
Correct, sir. So I'm waiting to receive your guidance out of closed session in terms of what you'd
Okay,
like
gotcha,
to
I
charge
understand.
me to do moving forward. And so just based on law and policy, I can't move forward until I have guidance from the board.
Okay.
All right, 2.1, approval of the agenda.
I have something. I didn't see anything on here about the vaccine incident.
WITN incident.
What incident would that be?
The basketball game.
We don't typically talk about discipline in open session. That's typically a closed session.
I'm more concerned about the use security measures.
That's something you can ask the chair to put onto the board agenda. That's not something you would ask me to do.
All right, do I have a motion to approve agenda? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? 3.1, you have an attachment for the minutes, 3 of them. Everybody's had plenty of ample time to review for the January 7th. Anybody need to recuse themselves?
Can't remember.
All in favor, say aye. All opposed? All right. 4.1, high school principals. Tracy Nixon. Mid-year review. Good evening, Ms. Nixon.
Good evening.
This is the data session you're asking for.
Good, thanks.
Right. All right.
Ready?
Yep.
All right, Tracy Nixon, Northside High School, mid-year data presentation. It's me, I think, sorry. All right, so biology end-of-course data, we have taken the test, but remember that the biology scores are delayed till the fall of 2025 due to the standard implementation. So we're waiting on that to come in. They're saying probably October. Math 1 end-of-course data. At Northside, we do a year-long course, so there is no EOC data at this time. No data from fall testing. That'll come out in June. We did foundations of Math 1 in the fall, and the spring is the second half of Math 1, and we'll assess them in June, and the unit assessments are indicating that the students are learning, and we're showing growth on that. If you look at this chart right here, it shows you our latest Unit 3 assessment. The county's average score is a 60, and ours is a 68.6, and we also came up 10 points from the Unit 2 assessment. So we are doing really well in Math 1 compared to where we were, and we'll take those tests in June. The end-of-course data for Math 3, we took that in the fall. And we were at 86.1 proficiency with levels 3, 4, and 5, and career and college readiness is 61.1, and that's for levels 4 and 5. English 2 in the course data proficiency from the first semester is at 46.3, levels 3, 4, and 5, and career and college readiness is 12.2 for levels 4 and 5. Technology glitch. Okay, our data-informed steps. All right, this is what we're working on right now. All of our tested subjects are providing Panther time and after-school tutoring at least twice a week until June. We hired 2 retired English teachers to work with students in small groups to target reading comprehension using context clues to figure out meanings of words, vocabulary building, inference making, and test taking strategies. And those teachers are coming in and pulling kids out of class and working with them in small group. The kids really seem to like it, and they are making strides in that. We've also implemented daily grammar warm-ups to help improve our ACT and English 2 scores. When you look at English 2, the grammar, that's an area we really need to work on, and that's why we're doing what we're doing. We implemented iExcel in all English, math, and biology classes as an additional resource, and our school-wide vocabulary words or words of the week were utilized in all classrooms every day. Words of the week for second semester are content-specific. First semester, they were more toward the testing strategies, but for second semester, we're doing content-specific words. We're also doing an ACT boot camp that will occur in February for all juniors, and each student will receive a study guide book to use for the March 13th test. And our tested EOCs will have individual boot camps, Math 1, Math 3, Bio, and English 2 in May before testing, and we usually have really good turnout for that. The vocabulary program we just purchased for all teachers to incorporate vocabulary in their daily lesson plans that are content specific, and they're trying to do that at the beginning with the warm-ups. And then we're having professional development training, and that's continuing. We had in the fall, we're having it in the spring for increase in literacy strategies in all areas of learning. The end. Any questions?
Anybody got any questions for Ms. Nixon on the mid-year check-in for Northside?
Do we normally get these presentations without us getting those in advance, or do we do them at the time when they show up here at the board meeting?
This is the first time we've done it, so how would you
Yeah.
like to do it?
Well, that
Yeah.
explains it, okay.
Yeah, this is the first time we've done the mid-year. Gary asked for it.
If you remember, last year, we just gave you a large binder of data,
Okay,
and we just felt as though having a connection and a point of interest with the principal, that you could speak with them both in session or out of session as well.
okay. In the
This is our
future,
first time.
I'm sorry. In the future, could we get those in advance?
When we have the data, we'll get it to you as
Okay,
fast as we
thank you.
can.
Anybody got a question for Ms. Nixon? All right, who's up next? Mr. Holt? Evening, Justin.
Thank you.
Good evening, folks.
Good
Evening,
evening,
Justin.
Mr. Justin.
All right, good to see everybody for this mid-year update. So we will talk a little bit of nuance throughout this, but essentially go through some of the very similar things that you just saw. Math 1 and Math 3, end of course data. So we're going to start with our Math 1 end of course data, and this is a point where we really have to look at some nuance. We actually had a very low proficiency rate out of the one section that we tested. So we also do year-long math. So we will really have 65 of our students test in the spring. This group of 30 students was a group that we really felt needed extra attention last year, and so we put them through foundations twice. So another way to look at this group of students is through what's called EVOS, or predicted growth. Not sure how familiar you are with that, but EVOS is a way to predict the likelihood of student proficiency. And so we look at these 30 students that we had, and although two of them passed, the average likelihood of proficiency for these 30 students was 10%. So we had 7 students that had below a 5% chance of passing the EOC. We had 9 students that were below a 10%. So that was 16 of the students. So we did try to give them extra intervention last year with year-long foundations. Last year we had a similar group of students that was at a 36% pass rate. So we're not super pleased with this group, but we understand it is what it is. We did have 3 additional students within 1 scale score of actually passing the EOC. So we do think there actually still can be some growth out of this group. Now, as I said, about 65%, 2/3 of our data will come in the spring from those who are taking the Math 1 EOC. Math 3 is a different story. We're much happier with this data. It's a 61% proficiency rate. Now, there's a little more nuance that I would also add, as you guys know, on the school report card. The Math 3 scores that count for your report card are those students that take Math 3 exam for the first time in high school, right? We did have a 100% pass rate. That was out of a Math 3 honors group. So that's the bit of nuance I'd like to add to the Math 3. We do have a couple more sections, so we'll have another almost 50 students testing in June for Math 3. As we move to English 2, here we look at a 90% pass rate on the proficiency at 3, 4, and 5, so very happy with these scores. But I will again offer nuance. We had one section of English 2, it was an honors section, so we do expect there to be a high pass rate. There were a couple of students that are actually in the alternative learning program that didn't receive proficiency, but were grouped in our English 2 data. So let's talk data-informed next steps. So we will continue with what we call PLC collaboration, professional learning community collaboration. What are going to be some of the anchors of that collaboration? We're going to have data-informed. We're going to use the assessments from both common assessments that are district-generated as well as state North Carolina check-ins. We'll incorporate that data into lesson planning. And we're going to really look for rigor. So we will look for rigor that matches what the end-of-course assessments are going to expect. And I'll talk about that a bit further down with the DOK, or depth of knowledge training that we are doing. Now, as our own professional learning cycle has been this year, we're focusing now on intervention, right? So how can we intervene with kids? So tutoring, of course, not only from instructors, but also from peers. We're incorporating peer tutoring. We are doing that both during flex time as well as after school. We are also using IXL for cross-curricular literacy and math and science support. And then the framework of MTSS, multi-tiered system of supports. That's how we identify kids that need intervention. That's going to come partly from some of that data-informed assessment, but it's also going to come from some academic attendance or behavior data. And then finally, as I said, we're focused on school-wide depth of knowledge. This is actually a framework that Rick Anderson is working on with our assistant principals. We're leveraging that work across our faculty to really increase rigor in all subject areas. And then finally, we're adopting school-wide mentorship for some of our most at-risk kids to really move the needle, as we stated, in intervention. All right. I think that's all I have on here.
Joel, like I say, this is the first time we're seeing this and trying to put it in perspective. As far as end of course, what is there anything we can glean, anything from this that tells us? First of all, tell us what your projections were. What were your goals for your scores and all this? It looks like you're doing a lot of different things. How are you progressing on those goals that you set for this year?
Yeah, great question. So first of all, we sort of left last year's data, took it and digested it, and really targeted that we want to increase our literacy scores as measured by English 2. Again, we feel good about where we are, but we do understand that that was an honors section. So it's been really important that my English teachers are collaborating, that we're utilizing some tools across the school. IXL is one of those tools. Embracing rigor with that DOK work. So I think that we are tracking well in that English. That's probably the most singular point that we have been laser focused on.
Okay, all right. It's just hard for us to, see what's going to look like at year end, what kind of progress you're making toward year end. What were your goals for year end as far as some of your scores are concerned? Like I say, you look like you're doing a lot of new, different things, additional things, and it's just it's hard from a presentation like this. I know for us to see that you are making some real progress at this time. Are you satisfied with the progress you're making at this point?
Right, so in addition to improvements in literacy, we're looking to exceed growth again, which we've done 2 out of the past 3 years. I think that even with that Math 1 data, that Math 3 data, and English 2, I think we are trending towards that goal as well. But what you nailed down is part of really the complexity in student achievement. yes, I think that we are making progress, but we also have to recognize sort of where we are, right? We're February 3rd. We, had some interruptions to January, right? But, we're getting into the thick of it right now in terms of February, March, April, May, before we really see those dividends on those end-of-course tests. But yes, I think we are progressing.
Okay. And as far as the growth, you are seeing a good increase in the growth that you've been in each one of these areas? You are seeing substantial growth in these areas?
As with the limited data we have, yes.
Okay, I understand. I understand that it's limited and it's mid-year and, you're trying some new things, but yeah, that growth is something I think that means something to all of us. As long as you are seeing growth and you're satisfied with the growth you've got, then that makes me feel good anyway.
Good.
I think it makes everybody feel good. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Carolyn?
Hey, Justin. On your math one, I know that is disappointing, but are those students repeating math one? What's the strategy behind if they didn't perform and didn't pass, are they repeating it?
So some of those students still went on to earn the credit. The actual state curve for the test doesn't really entirely require demonstrating proficiency to get a passing grade. So some of them have passed on, some of them are having to repeat, some of them have been in it enough that we're looking at other creative ways to move them towards graduation goals.
Right, because ultimately, when they get out in the work world, you want them to be proficient enough to hold down a job, apply for a job, keep a job, and all those things. And I just wonder, I know what the state says, but I just wondered what Southside says.
Yeah, so it
Case by case
is
basis.
a little bit case by case, kind of in those
Yeah.
buckets that I just
Right,
sort of
understand.
outlined, right?
All right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Anybody else got any questions for Justin? Thank you, Mr. Hope.
All right, thanks, sir.
Dr. Swinson? Evening, Dr. Swinson.
Evening. Thanks for having me. Now, my peers had much more fancier presentations. My data are in charts, but I'm willing to talk through all of them in the same fashion. So I'm going to start off with Math 1. On the board is your 2023-24 end of year grade level proficiency for your Math 1s at Washington High School. And on the left is where we're sitting mid-year. Very happy with this.
Very simple, but it says a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's all.
Data shows itself.
Nothing fancy. In the Math 3, this is for all. Now, not all your Math 3s count for accountability towards your performance grade, but for all of the Math 3s that took the EOC, last year we were at 32.2% grade level proficiency. This year, 36.6%. I have a question mark because the ones that count for you in Math 3 are the ones who took Algebra 1 or Math 1 in 8th grade. They're the ones who count for you on your performance grade, and when we're looking straight at the data, somebody told me today that worked it last year. I did not work it out for last year. Of course, I wasn't here last year. It was 45% is what I was told today. I'm going to run with that, but we're at 84.8% grade level proficiency there. We only missed 5 students being 100% across the board. So I'm happy with that, but I'd like that number to go up, and I've got some numbers at the end that go along with this. English 2. End of last year, 38.2% grade level proficient. This year, mid-year, 45.7%. So we're up in every category so far. I put in, of course, we don't have the biology data because it's being renormed this year, but I put in additional performance data because all of this, when you talk about the performance grade and being a low performance school, to move that, you've got to move the majority of it, which is 80% in achievement. So these additional categories are where we're at right now in the other graded categories. So in graduation rate, we're from 82 to 91. In math course rigor, we are 89 to greater than 95%, which is the top you can get. I mean, that's just where we're going to stay. In the ACT is a work in progress. These ACT scores, keep in mind, are last year's juniors, 15.5%, 12.5 the previous year. And then on the work keys assessment went up just a smidgen from 46.7, 47.3%. That's all I've got. I'll take questions.
Anybody, you want to go first?
I don't have a question, I have a statement. Without using any bad language, wow.
Your mic's not on, Carol.
Good. No, I congratulate all of our principals, first of all, because I know this is a tough job, and I know you kind of walked into a tough job, but thank you. Thank you, and thank you to your staff.
Oh, the staff's doing a fantastic job.
Well, I think it shows.
Really doing a great job.
I think it shows, and thank you. This is
Yes, ma'am.
great.
Anybody else got anything? Dr. Swenson? All right. Go. Your mic's not on.
Mike's not.
I just want to congratulate you on the whole feel of the school. The scores are one thing, but there's a whole lot that plays into it more than what I see on these tests that the state gives.
Right.
Because everybody knows how I feel about most of the state testing.
Right.
Not, I don't have a real
It's
fondness.
the ballgame rules we have to play by.
I play
Right.
by the rules, but I don't have
That's
to
right.
like them. But other than that, because you know I have someone at your school, so I am at your school, and I know how it was, I know how it is. And if you haven't been there, the comparison from this year to past, there is no comparison. The school's much better behavior, all across the board, everything. Matter of fact, I had a talk with my grandson just the other day at length. One of those that he doesn't like to have with me, but he's locked in the car with me, so he has no choice. And he said it was the best year that he's had in several years.
Good.
So that tells me a lot because I know how he comes across. But
Yes, sir.
so I appreciate you getting things sort of ship shape out there, and the scores will come. But
That's right.
you know, you can't have these numbers improve if everybody else does whatever they want to do all the time.
Right.
And they are not at his school. Trust me, they are not doing whatever they want to do. They're doing
Right.
what they're told to do.
That's right, they're doing a good job at it, too.
And
We've
they're doing
set
a
the
great job at
expectation,
it.
and
Your
they're
teachers
standing
are
by it.
doing a fantastic job out there.
That's right. And you talked about growth. The question came out earlier about the growth piece of it. And I don't know if you remember from my first presentation, but the growth from last year was minus 12%, which is abysmal. And if your performance scores are moving and your teachers are doing what they're supposed to do and students are, culture-wise, that growth will move. I don't know if it'll be
Right.
within 2 standard deviations, but it's going to move. From minus 12 tells me that folks were just like, I'm done, I'm doing what I'm doing. But I'm telling you, I am so happy with my staff, I don't know what to do
Yeah.
right now, and the students as well. And I also invite him, come on out anytime and visit. These are if I'd have known they were putting better graphics, I would have put the pack up there. I would have made it real fancy. I didn't realize, we were all, but there's a lot of other spreadsheets and a lot of data and a lot of weekend work and things into this that I'll be glad to show you, just the pieces and parts. Like when you look at, I think another question that came out was the vision at the end of the year, where do you see yourself? One of the things that, I don't have it on this slide, but I can tell you the low and the high of where we're gonna be, because I know everybody that's testing in the spring semester. So if nobody else scores well in math, then the low for Math 1 will be 19%, and that's just not gonna happen. Somebody's gonna get grade level proficient, we're gonna move them. But the low will be 19, which is still higher than 7. The high will be 82, and so on and so forth. But I'd be glad to talk through the numbers with anybody that would like to come out and sit and chit-chat and walk through the halls. Be glad to.
It's just a whole different focus that's going on at the school.
And we know you're a data guy and you know how to dive
I
into it
love
and get it going.
I do. I love it, and I love the school. I love the school business. Not gonna lie.
Well, is there, and I did not ask Tracy or Justin this, so I apologize. As a board, is there anything, and the other two can feel free to speak up, is there anything that we can do as a board to support you that's not being done currently? Are all your positions filled? Are you having substitutes in classes where you'd rather have a certified teacher? Any of that going on?
I've got some substitutes, but I've got them filled, or a board approval tonight will assist with that, but I've got them all filled. I think we've got good, experienced, certified folks coming in.
Great. Justin, is it the same for you?
Yeah, we're good. We're looking at one position that probably brings in February 18th.
Okay, and I think, has Tracy left?
Tracy left.
Yeah,
She had a ball game.
Yeah.
right. Well, thank you
Yes,
so
ma'am.
much.
I mean, I appreciate it, but
This
I'm
is
supported very
phenomenal.
well by the district office and by the board, and I appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate what you're doing.
Yep,
Yeah,
thank
yes,
you,
sir.
Dr. Swinton.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We're gonna move down to 4.2 while Ms. Godfrey is, walking over there, get ready for the Power School, global breach, data breach. Ms. Godfrey?
Good evening. Just going to share a quick update on the data breach that happened with the Power School Student Information System. They have done a good job with trying to put together support for individuals that were involved in the data breach. We did receive our information last week regarding our numbers for things that Power School knows that data has been shared or leaked. We have some Social Security numbers, some email addresses that have been shared. Power School is doing everything also in combination with DPI for notices for those that they have any information on, including physical address as well as email address. And Power School is taking on that piece for notifying each one of those people that were involved in the breach. What they're doing now is they're offering anybody, students, staff, parents as well, 2 years of the complimentary identity protection services. So anybody that's been a part of that, whether they were or were not in the data breach, has access to 2 years of that complimentary protection. Power School has information on their website. NCDPI has information on their website. And Andrew and I are working to also share that information on our website, just for people to be able to go to if they've got information they want to know about, or if they want to figure out how to go in and enroll in this identity protection. So Power School is doing a good job of trying to Monday morning quarterback some problems, but they're doing a good job.
Anybody? Go ahead, Donald.
Amber, do we know if any of the board members were involved in that? I think I asked Dr. Cheeseman that, and he said it could be. So do you know if any of our Social Security numbers were?
It goes back to 2012, so there could be some. Gail Rowell, she's our student information coordinator for the district. She's been trying to go through the data and see if there were staff members, students, and I know that she'll also look for you guys. It's not something that we've talked about specifically, but it's something we could find out.
Is our district contacting the affected ones, or is Power School and DPI contacted?
Power School.
Okay.
So are you saying that we don't know everyone who may have been compromised?
We
For
have,
sure?
yeah, no, we do. We have information, but I was just saying, I don't know specifically.
Okay.
I haven't gone through the data to pull out board members or,
Okay, but anyone who is compromised will be contacted or has been contacted, I hope.
yes, sir, by Power School.
I would say will be contacted.
I don't think that they've
I'm not
officially
sure.
started anything.
I would say will be contacted by Power School. I'm not sure that they've made all the contacts yet, because they're going to have to go back to 2012.
I watched my mailbox.
Go ahead, Carol.
Would it be a good idea to suggest whether or not you've been contacted that you should take advantage of what they're offering?
I would say so. Even if you weren't involved in the breach, it's still a good thing for you to do, to
Right,
be able
if
to
it's
go
free.
in.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. And students can do it as well. Power School's given information for students that are 18 or above, as well as sharing some information if they're 18 or younger than 18. So it's not just parents, they're also making sure that students have the ability to if they want to.
Donald?
And you'll let us know about how to contact them?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Ms. Godfrey, should we expect any kind of compliance issues with our student base that could have been damaged or encroached on in any way? Should we expect any kind of backlash?
I'm not sure I understand the
The
question.
information that was in Power School and the families that are.
Your mic's not on, Stacy.
Is there going to be, and how do I do that?
Push the button.
Is there any future repercussions that we should be looking for and proactive to protect
I think
those
it-
individuals?
I think that at this point, what Power School is doing by allowing people to have 2 years of free service is really about the best thing that can be done. Unfortunately, it's our staff and students that were involved in the attack, but Power School's taken full advantage of making sure that everybody is going to be notified. Again, whether you were or were not notified or involved, I think probably the biggest thing that we can do to be precautious is to enroll in that complimentary service.
Okay, but does Beaufort County Schools have a proactive plan for when this happens on our end for protection with yourself or the attorney?
I don't know with the attorney, but
I got it. So just so everyone knows, Power School and Infinite Campus is a student information system that's RFP'd through DPI and the State Board of Education, so
Right.
it's not something that we get to choose. So Beaufort County Schools and its constituents are actually victims in this case.
Right.
So we're using platforms that are provided to us with safety measures provided to us. So in short, any type of compliance issue that Power School instructed us to do, that someone would then seek damages for us, then we would work, the board would have options to work with your own attorney to pass those back to Power School
Okay.
in that regard.
Fantastic.
So this is not a breach on our level
Right.
whatsoever. You're considered a victim in this.
Okay.
Everybody good?
Yeah.
Good. All right. 4.4, are these, 4.4, policy revisions, technical correction. 4.3. County Commissioner mid-year retreat. We're passing something around. I'm sorry, I got ahead of me one time.
So as this is the work session, this is why you're receiving this information right now, and what I'm asking you to do is walk through it with me to guide me in terms of what you would like me to speak about at the County Commissioners mid-year retreat. And for those of you who are new, each year your county commissioners meet with, typically in January, sometimes in February like this year, they meet with all of the entities of which provide services in Beaufort County where they provide funding. So Beaufort County Schools, Beaufort Community College, Emergency Management System, or Emergency Management Services, any and all, they do a mid-year session with us because we're considered July 1 to June 30th. But at the retreat, they like to know where we were, where we are, and where we're headed. All right, so in short, it is next Tuesday, February 11th at 8:30 in the morning. We're first to go based on schedules. And so I'm sharing just the template of what I've typically used each year, but asking you to maybe bring some items to this document of what you'd like me to discuss and/or to say, hey, no, we don't want you to discuss that. All right? So in short, top page is the introductory slide. Second page is your strategic plan. These are the 3 pillars that the board in 2022, actually 2021, voted on as our strategic plan. And so that plan is from 2022 to 2027. So these are the 3 guiding principles of that. But if you turn to the next page, here are the discussion points. And so just to give you some general understanding of what we talk about or what I talk about, and I typically base these bullet points on the direction of which we're going as a school system, but also to try to anticipate the questions that your county commissioners would be asking as they're the another source of funding. All right. So ideally, we talk about the state accountability model, which is ultimately your state report card for your school report cards, excuse me. And that is the letter grade system as we know of it, A through F. And in short, although we have a new state superintendent, the work towards moving away from the current accountability model has not changed. So it has been held, waiting for the dynamics of new leadership coming in and how that individual works with the State Board of Ed and DPI. So in short, that's really the umbrella of where we're still working. The 80% proficiency, 20% growth, letter grades on a 15-point scale. So this is just my opportunity to update the county commissioners that we're still playing on the same playing field around that accountability model. ADM is average daily membership, student enrollment. As you know, it's declining. You've seen documentation from 1999 until today that you've declined by nearly 2,000 students in 25 years. You're going to see that further in this document. new school, pre-K through 3, which is Washington Elementary School, which helps you in that consolidation model of taking John Cotton Taylor and Eastern Elementary School. This bullet point is a reminder that this school will service about 900 students for pre-K through 3, thus knocking down Eastern Elementary School and repurposing John Cotton Taylor at your pleasure. And this is also serves as a reminder to the county commissioners that you do have to walk through a closing procedure to close Eastern and close JCT, but you do that when you get a little bit closer. The Beaufort County Schools budget allotments, and what that means to us is typically where we are now, and as you know, we provide you with budget updates. DPI sends us budget updates frequently. I think we're on our 70th for this school year since July 1st, and that's a give and take throughout the year. But we can talk about how we've seen our allotments come down in terms of teacher allocation, not necessarily in terms of instructional money, but the money that goes towards hiring people and staffing people, we're seeing it come down, and I'll share that in another slide. Planning allotments for 2025, 2026, Mr. Doan as the assistant superintendent, myself are meeting with principals all through February. So principals as a mid-year check, I had 2 meetings today, plus assistant principals as well. But we're talking about what does it look like to staff our schools when we're talking about planning allotments, meaning total number of teachers at a building, total number of TAs, total number of counselors, total number of assistant principals. What most people don't realize, and I'll say it for the good of the group, when the state hands you a total number of teachers, they do not do that per school. They do that per district, and then the board, myself, Mark, others, work on distributing that allotment to the buildings. So the state does not give you X amount of teachers for a particular school based on number. It's X amount of teacher allotments per total amount of students in the district. And that is something to explain to the county commissioners why there might be gaps in certain employment areas. We'll talk a little bit about teacher and other personnel shortages, meaning we still struggle to find social workers, counselors, school psychologists, but I know the state of North Carolina is trying to increase funding at a level that might be comparable to private industry in order to gather people into the public school system. Building teacher and administrator pipeline, so if we do have personnel shortages, specifically what are we doing? So I think the board recalls that we offer the superintendent's leadership cohort to build a pipeline of future assistant principals and principals who desire to walk through that. Excited to say, off the top of my head, about 10 of the 13 principals are internal hires or Beaufort County people. So we do have great talent that has joined them from outside in, but also we're working to develop TAs into teachers, assistant principals into principals, so on and so forth. This will never end as a focus as long as I sit here, and that's the wellness of our employees and our students, where we are, not just in school nutrition, but also where are we mentally, and what does mental health look like across our district. And then as Ms. Davis asked earlier, safety and security, we do talk about threat assessments and working with our Beaufort County Sheriff's Office, and ultimately how they visit our schools, work with our principals, provide you guidance, how the sheriff does come and meet with you, and then we do updates across the district. So in short, those are about the 8 or 9 bullet points overall. The guidance I need is the next page and further. All right, so, and I know the audience can't necessarily see this, but you will when the presentation is finally assembled. But as you see, this is the historical data of a 10-day count, meaning that the attendance is counted every single day, usually through 10 days. But I've increased it since being here in 2019 to 20 days, so the board can really see almost a full month of school. But 10 days is what I could go all the way back to 1999 on. I could probably gather it a little further back. But what you'll see is how the ADM in 1999 was 7,438 students. And what you'll also see in the right-hand column is change. There's the occasion where change has been positive, but over 25 years, it's the occasion where it's mostly been negative. And the board has talked about this at great lengths, whether it's graduation rate is greater than birth rate. We've talked about people residing in Beaufort County having less children total We've talked about people in Beaufort County now having more choices, whether it's charter school, private school, home school, virtual school, public school. Lots of choices that people can go to. But it's also a really great example of my own family. We've moved here to be a part of this, but I have one child, and she didn't start when she was kindergarten. She started when she was in 5th grade. So then you have that one child for a certain amount of time. And also now, high school students can take through Career and College Promise college-level courses, and they can actually graduate early, not just at early college high school, but our other traditional high schools. So kids are transitioning out a little bit sooner than they have as well. So there's a lot of factors to that. Families get up and leave, they move for promotion. What is our economic development in Beaufort County working on to help us sustain? So partnerships that we need to have with our county commissioners and economic development. But as you see that, you'll see the 3 red numbers of negative 164 at the very bottom. This 164 is the average of the previous 3 years, so it's a guess, it's a projection. And the year 2026 actually starts fall of 2025, so I'm looking at this August. So if you look at 2028, I'm really saying to you fall of 2027. And for those in the audience, North Carolina looks at school year as the last day of June. So that would be school year 28 is the first day of school in August of 27. I know it looks weird, but that's the way they do it. So it's my projection to you, and solely my projection, that Beaufort County Schools could see the potential of dipping below 5,000 students if the trend continues. But as you notice, this is not a new trend. This is a historical trend, but it is increasing at a rate that's a little bit different. As you'll see through COVID, you had higher numbers because people left and went to private school because you were shut down. And we could not offer education face-to-face at that time. So in short, I'm really asking you, is this okay for me to dive into this type of conversation with the county commissioner? So keep that in mind. Move to the next page. On the next page is information I have previously shared, but the yellow is new information to me within the last few days, last few business days. And so what you see is PRC 001, and for those in the audience, when we look at our budgets for from the state of North Carolina, they essentially have a purpose code. So it's the program code. 001 goes to your state-funded teacher allotment. So if you noticed in school year 20, which is the fall of 19, Beaufort County Schools was allotted by the state 298.29 positions. So how do you get a half a position? Well, you supplement it with local dollars, all right? It's not a part-time position in general. Could be, but it's not. So as you look down, each of the last few years, you will see the trend line going down based off of your ADM. So in short, you went from 298, lost nearly 8.5 positions. Past that, you lost nearly 14.5. Why such the jump? Well, during COVID, the state of North Carolina said, look, we're not going to try to victimize all of our public schools and hurt them any more than what's happening right now. But eventually, after ESSER funds start to run out, and after we get everybody back open, we will ultimately balance the entire state in terms of where we are. That's why you see the jump from 8.5 to 14, and then another 14. So as we move down, it is slowed down in school year 24 and school year 25, which you're currently engaged in. But if you notice, I've now added school year 26. This is a projection, meaning based off of ADM, based off of trends of the previous paper, and based off of trend documentations that the state of North Carolina gives our finance team, we're projecting to lose nearly another 7. These are state-funded teacher positions. So in short, if that's the case, over the last 6 to 7 years, the Beaufort County Schools will have lost nearly 53.29 state-funded teacher positions. All right, that is more than several of our schools in total of teacher positions. So that is the burden that the 9 of you have is, if you're not receiving state-funded positions, how do you work with your local government in order to help bridge that gap? Which then goes to the next page. And this is where I would need to have the conversation with your commissioners with great respect, because we're always very happy with what they provide to us, but to show the gap. So in school year 21, which is the fall of 2020, so this is when Beaufort County Schools remained on remote instruction through COVID, just to give you knowledge, because you were shut down in COVID March of 2020. So this is the school year right after that. The Board of Education during that time asked for 15.1 million. You were funded at 14.5. This does not include capital. This does not include facility update. This is about your local expenditures. If you notice, it was more than $500,000 difference. We had ESSER funding, we had reserve funding, you could hold it, and we held it. The following year, school year 22, you asked for 14.9, so if you noticed, your request came down because you did have federal funds through the state assisting you, so you were flat funded in this regard by the county commissioners, which now decreases the difference to nearly 400,000, but you lost 400,000 in that exchange. If you'd like me to use different words when presenting this, let me know. That's why I'm seeking help. School year 23, you realized we were coming out of COVID. You recognized the needs of our schools. You recognized the previous 2 pages I gave you of teacher allotments being shrunk or shortened. You asked now for 16.6 million. You were flat funded for a 3rd straight year. Again, not capital, just local expenses, in tune of $2 million short. In school year 24, you asked for 17.1. You were given an increase in this area, which we were blessed with, at 15.5 million, but still about 1.5 million short of what your needs were. In this current school year, you asked for 18.1. You were given 16.1, again, another county commissioner increase, which you're blessed for, but short of 1.9 million of what you asked. So when people are starting to ask, what's happening in Beaufort County schools? So here's the story. Over 5 years, you have a shortfall of $6.5 million of what you've asked for. So if you see the blue and red line, you see the gap. In that gap, on the previous page, you have also had, during that time, 40-plus positions cut. I'm not including the yellow, because I don't know where we are just yet. So you've had the gap, you've had 40-some teacher positions cut, so you've had to use your reserve. And in that time, on average, you've lost about 164 kids a year. All right, so respectfully, how deep do you want me to have the conversation? But let me explain for those who are new. Why was the request increased each year if our allotments are going down and our students are going down? When the state of North Carolina provides a fiscal raise to our professional educators who absolutely deserve it, you as the Board of Education and your county are essentially on the fiscal hook to cover the health benefits, the FICA, portions of the raise that don't align to everyone. And so therefore, as the state increases the percent raises, your fiscal requirements are increased as well. And I don't think most people understand that. So that's part of why you're asking for more, because the state has blessed us with fiscal raises. But as a detriment to Beaufort County, do you then have to pay more into that? So it's a double-edged sword, because you're rooting for it, but you have to have the funds to stand behind it, is what I'm saying. Additionally, you have actually had increases in other areas of need to make sure that the district is moving forward, whether it's utility costs that have gone up, insurances that have gone up. These are things that you can't ignore because you have to have school. You have to be able to power the school. All right? And so those
Not
are,
capital. This
that's
is
not
not
capital.
capital.
This is,
I was just gonna say, with all that, we're way short on capital too.
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
We had, what, 9 million last year, 9 million in capital needs, and we only had 1.4 million to give out?
That's right.
Yeah, so over time, your county commissioners this past year came up over 2 million, and they very much blessed us. So it's very hard, because I hear your point. Over the years, when you're dealing with aging facilities, no matter whether it's 20 years old or 60 years old, you have to have attention to it. But you as a board don't provide your own cash flow. And most people don't understand that. You don't tax the authority. You're not the taxing agent, meaning that you don't determine how much local money comes to you. You have to ask for it. So if you don't receive the amount of money that you're asking for, then you're going to have to put that shortfall in place somewhere else. So to that, just really trying to get your thinking of, is this okay to start talking about? Now, before we dive all back into it, if you go to the next page, let's talk about some good things. And because I think despite losing 40-plus positions, having a $6.5 million gap in that area, and your ADM shrinking, well, take a look at this slide. Pre-pandemic, you had 0 low-performing schools. As based on the accountability model, low-performing is a D or an F. So you had 0. You had several, I think it was 5 or 6, maybe 6 or 7 that had Cs. I mean, when we first came together, you had 3 Ds. They came out of low-performing. Their teams were fantastic. But through the pandemic, well, I think we all agree that remote learning did not touch our students the way we had hoped. Coming out of the pandemic, you end up with 8, meaning 8 Ds. You had 0 Fs. You've never had an F, to my knowledge. So in short, look at school year 25. Well, we have rolled from 8 low-performing schools, LPS, to 5. So right now you have 5 low-performing schools. But look at school year 26 and Dr. Swinson's presentation alone. Washington High School is one of those schools that I project to come out of low performing. And so in short, we're really projecting 5 goes to 2. And then the following year, we're projecting 2 goes to 0. Now, those are just projections. You never know what happens internally. You don't know what happens with children. You don't know what happens with circumstances. But we have such the intention that this is where we believe it's going to happen. So if you say to me, Matthew, where are the other schools of the 5 to 2? I'm looking at Washington High School, P.S. Jones Middle School, and John Cotton Taylor. I mean, how exciting is that? So the other 2, I do expect them to come out of low performing the following year. So that is good news. And you are not a designated low performing district. So we're excited in that regard. You have come out of that as well. So despite one or others, you're not a failing school district. You've got really great things. So if you flip to the other page, the next page.
Excuse me, Matthew, that's why I was trying to get my hands around.
Yeah.
With regard to Justin.
Yeah.
You know, what progress are we making? Are we satisfied with the growth in proficiency and growth at the individual school level to see where we stand?
So if you're a fierce competitor the way I am and all 13 of your principals are, you're never going to be satisfied.
I've been waiting for that to be said.
Well, this
Sincerely.
is
Right.
we're talking about what we will and what we can present.
Well, and I'm going to follow your lead on how you want me to have the conversation.
Well, I think this is a good story,
right.
but we just need to, I was trying to get my hands around, show me.
Right.
Tell me
Oh,
what you're doing.
We're trying to provide it to you as fast as we get it. So we just received that information in total. All right, so on the next page, under considerations, state, local leadership changes. So we have new Board of Education members, congratulations. You have a new state superintendent. So that impacts us in terms of the direction you might want to go. It impacts us at the state level in terms of how the State Board of Education now works with the state superintendent and DPI and what their team looks like. Preparing for retirements and departures. So if you're in a fiscal crunch, then in fact, as you have people retire and depart, how do you shut down positions, switch people over? We've already started converting people to new positions in order to save cash flow. Planning and acting in a time of uncertainty. How much more money is the General Assembly going to give to vouchers? So in 2032, they're expected to have $800 million rolling towards the voucher system. That's going to impact you one way or the other. And then finally, I wrote it in the order that we receive it, and most people don't realize this. Your county commissioners actually fund you before the state and the federal government do, when it's backwards. your state budget doesn't actually come in until, like, usually July, August, September, October, whenever. Federal budget doesn't normally drop until September, October. So on behalf of the county commissioners, it's a hard challenge for them to really determine where the needle is. So even if they funded you at 100% of what you asked for, and the state rolled back in 3 months later and said, nope, you're $1 million down, it's a hard balance in public school systems. And then finally, this is our current enrollment, give or take a few, and what our projected enrollment would be for next year. So, and Mark, if you can let the attorney know, we'll be with him on the next one. So to that, here's the presentation. I'll be happy to add or subtract. Again, this is solely a mid-year report. This is not your actual budget presentation, of which you're going to work through as a team, and then we present that usually in April. But are you pretty much okay, or would you like me to
I'm
add
fine.
something?
I'm fine
think
with
it's
it.
good.
It tells the story just like the story is. No
On the
need to change it.
academics, are we able to break down what schools those are and the score, just for presentation purposes to our county commissioners?
Sure, I can give them
right, thank
the
you.
scores.
Donald?
Oh, I was just gonna say, if we come up with something that we didn't think about tonight, because we're just given this,
Yeah.
can we call you?
Just call.
Yeah, this is not something you have to vote on, but yeah, just call me, come see me. I can come see you, whatever you need, and we can add to it. If you want to be a part of the conversation, you're welcome to stand there with me.
Thank you.
And thank you
Either
for
one. It's
sharing.
about an hour long, but it's not normally an hour.
I'm sorry, just again, what's the date of it?
February 11th.
February 11th, next
February
Tuesday.
11th.
Yeah. Thank you. This is very informative. I appreciate it. I think there's a couple of things that I think the commissioners are aware of, and we've talked about it a little bit. It could affect our enrollment in a good way. There are 2 rather large housing developments that are going to go out on Market Street Extension. One of the issues we struggle with in a school system is housing for our teachers. And the last time it was discussed, I think the price range for these houses will be between $250 and $350 versus $550 to $650, which is way out of teachers' range. Because we've had a lot of people that may work here, but they're having to live in Greenville or Williamston or somewhere out of Beaufort County, and that's where they enroll their children. So I'm hopeful that this will bring some families with children into our system so that we'll grow. The other thing is, yes, the population in Beaufort County in itself is down. So it has a direct impact on us. The population overall is down. And something that maybe Daniel and Stacy aren't aware of, and I am assuming this is still the rule, after that 10-day/20-day, whoever else enrolls, you don't get the money for them. So
You don't get to dip back in the pot.
you do not get to increase teachers because you've now got 10 more 4th graders. Mark and Matthew have to work their magic to make these classroom numbers work out. But you do not get more money because they enrolled after your ADM was determined. Now, likewise, they don't take it away from you when you lose one, do they? Right.
Well, if the student leaves and does not come back, the money follows. the
Has to
student
follow
that
them,
doesn't
right.
come back.
Right, so, so it puts you more on the struggling end than the improvement end. Because you do have people that move after that cutoff date,
Well,
that
and
move into
also,
the county.
We pay out to 8 different entities, meaning students choose not to come to Beaufort County Schools, but they choose to go to, say, Washington Montessori as a charter public school. The money follows the child.
Follows them to
But
that
it
school.
flows through us. We send checks to them. All right, but I can explain that to all of you on a different day.
And what about students that live in Beaufort County that are homeschooled?
They don't get any
They
state
don't
money.
get any,
That
do
doesn't
they?
come into play.
As a matter of fact, that would be a consideration that the board could move with in another date and time when, if in fact you wanted to offer up to 2 classes to a homeschool student to come on campus, then I could enroll them.
I know we've kicked that around a little bit in the past.
Right, but that also, some of your homeschool students would choose not to do that because of the athletic portion of that too. So lots of conversations around budgets that you could look at, definitely.
Well, I personally think this is great. I think adding just a little bit the numbers, I think, which are very encouraging. So we thank y'all, because that didn't come without a lot of hard work. I'm very happy with it.
Do we have an idea of what that homeschool figure is?
I do, and I did not bring it with me, but I can email it to all of you tomorrow. I do have it listed, because we do try to know where our kids go. I apologize for not having that or thinking that you'd ask that.
That's all right. With regard to the new home development, and that's an issue, I know that based on where I live and the experience that we've had just surrounding our subdivision, that there's a lot of speculative activity, but even just around Smallwood subdivision, probably within a mile of it, they're at least speculative. They're planned developments for probably 700 to 800 homes.
Yes,
That'd
yes.
be great for us.
It's gonna be in 2 or 3 phases, because it kind of comes right up to where I go to church. And other than some of that farmland, which right now will remain farmland, but yeah, there's 200 or 300 per phase, 1, 2, and 3. So it could really increase our population, and I just want to make sure we're ready for it.
Would we be prepared if that overspilled the 900 student expectation at K through 3?
Yes.
Yes, we're
Pre-K through 3
prepared.
it would?
Yes. We're prepared.
Dr. Cheeseman, thank you for this information. You said we pay out to roughly 8 entities. Do
I
you
can
know-
provide a list to all of you
Do you
when
know
I
about-
email the other stuff.
Do you know about how many students that encompasses?
I'd have to look at the calculation because it changed year to year, but I can tell you it's over $1 million.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say, I bet he can tell you how much money it is.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll send all of you an update tomorrow with
Thank
that.
you.
It's,
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
it's pretty disturbing.
Board, we're gonna have to jump to 5.1 right quick, because our attorney's got another meeting, and then we'll jump back to 4.4, because he's on the line.
And as Steve comes in, what you're looking for is 5.1 True Mountain Capital. Several months ago, Beaufort County Schools was approached by True Mountain Capital for an opportunity to raise money specifically around school improvements and basically school construction. And so I asked Attorney Rawson to work with True Mountain Capital, 1, to see if this is a true legitimate opportunity, and 2, whether this would be an opportunity that the board would consider. And when I say raise money, I'm talking about projected $3 to $4 million that you might be able to actually use into your current pre-K through 3 construction, which means it would be less local funds. So I've asked Steve to join us today to talk more about this.
We're waiting for him to start the meeting.
Who's,
So this funding could potentially affect the level that the county is giving us at this, for this particular project?
It
Or is
could.
it additional, I guess, additional projects also?
within the same construction project.
It
So it has to be I'm sorry.
Yeah, you good.
It has to follow suit to a need that you believe exists within your current project. Typically, True Mountain Capital works with entities where they had a shortfall of funding, so then they had to scale back their project. Whereas you, as Beaufort County Schools, happen to be in a good position where you have just a little bit of excess funding. So therefore, True Mountain Capital, who then goes back to its constituents, who then pay into this tax credit, they want to hear the story of what would Beaufort County Schools do with $3.5 or $4 million in this school construction. For example, would you create the most dynamic education center for your exceptional children population like something of that nature that can be so innovative that your professional educators would get involved to design and look at. What does your physical fitness look like inside your buildings, where children normally just have the PE room or the gymnasium, but how awesome would it be to have a horizontal rock wall for those kids to have something? And you're talking, again, about pre-K, so 4-year-olds up to 3rd graders, all right? So something in that regard. But to that, it just seemed too good to be true in the conversations that I was having, and I just didn't believe it. And so I called the attorney, and he and multiple attorneys then spoke about it, and they realized that, yes, other school districts are engaged in this.
Here we go.
And so I've asked him to join us.
Can you hear us, Steve?
Yes, I can. Good evening, everybody.
Hey, Steve.
Can you put up the microphone to him? Amber? Yep. Can you put the hand mic up to him if it's not on the mouth? Thank you. So Steve, I've given a general overview as to how I came to know True Mountain Capital and True Mountain Holdings. And I gave the board an overview of initial conversation as to why True Mountain was first interested, meaning trying to help us with the construction opportunity, realizing that we have a little bit of excess construction funding thanks to the state capital grant, but also our county commissioners were blessed in that regard. And so we would have to create an exceptional story. But could you please advise the board in terms of, is this legitimate, what your legal thinking is, and also what steps and where we are now?
Yes, and good evening, everybody. So as Dr. Cheeseman said, the district was approached by this investment company that works in the new market tax credit area with an eye toward assisting different community organizations, including school districts, to acquire some additional funding to support their community investments in lower income communities. And while I think that we all from the start thought this looks a little bit like voodoo in terms of producing money for the school districts, this is something we have seen before. It is also something we've had conversations with an attorney who works specifically in North Carolina with various governmental entities in this type of scenario. So it is a legitimate program. The new market tax credit program has been around for 2 or 3 decades now. It's grown in recent years, but I don't know how deep Dr. Cheeseman went, and certainly my expertise does not go deep enough to answer a lot of questions about it. But the basic idea is that the federal government works with some community development entities to facilitate a tax credit to investors who put money into local projects in lower income rural communities. And the proceeds of those investments end up in the hands of the local entities, such as a school district. So the program here, what they are proposing is that they believe they can get a tax credit allocation that will produce somewhere between $3 and $4 million of proceeds for the school district. And the district would owe nothing up until they get through basically the closing process on the loan that would produce the proceeds. What the company needs from the board at this time is what's called a contingency collaboration agreement, that in order to go to the investors and get them to invest in this program, they need to be able to show that they have an agreement with the school district that this is in fact going to happen if the investors give the thumbs up on a sizable investment. And so at this point, what Dr. Cheeseman, working closely with our office, has done is executed a contingency collaboration agreement that is entirely contingent on the board formally approving that this month, so that they can produce. There's apparently an investment conference at the end of the month. They were hoping to have this letter and agreement to go with and speak to some potential investors. So We have worked closely with, as I said, another attorney who does this work regularly, and she has advised on the agreement. The Jones County School Board has done one of these a few years ago. The Northampton County School Board is trying to do one now, and so you are not alone in this project. It is certainly not guaranteed. So all this agreement says is that if they are able to successfully obtain this investment and the proceeds that would go to the board would in fact use them the way that it's been discussed, so that the investor in fact gets the credit that they were promised. We are aware of, I think Dr. Cheeseman just said, that the budgeting issues are such that you may not need the full $3.5 million that they might be able to get. And if that's the case, we're gonna have to work with them to cut it back, and they understand that. That we cannot accept funding that we can't spend, and we don't want to end up in a situation where their investors feel like they've been misled. So, certainly that's part of the conversation, but then we've made that very clear throughout the conversations. So the business item tonight is simply to authorize and basically ratify this contingency collaboration agreement, which says to them that if they go do these things, and if they get the loan, the investments, and the proceeds come to the board, that they will get a percentage, which I think is 2.5%, and that the board will in fact use the money for the project that it advertises. In terms of what the board will need to do with this project, there will be some data that they need to build their pitch to the investors, including things about the school construction project, what can be done with the money that what would come in from the proceeds, how that enhances the project, and how it will benefit your students in the community. And so that'll be a conversation between the company, the vendor, and Dr. Cheeseman and the staff to make sure they've got the information that they need to build that story that says that this money will be very well used within the Beaufort County schools. And it will be linked to this specific project. This is not just general funding. So I'll stop there, but if there are questions, let me know.
Donald Shreve is going to be first.
Mr. Rawson, good evening. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, sir.
Good evening. When I hear the words "too good to be true," you get a little bit nervous. And I hear what we're saying about tax credits, allocations, but I also hear loans. I'm trying to understand what this is. I'm hearing about loans. I guess one question I have, I think you've answered that, is there any finance charge? But we're saying we're borrowing money are we saying we're borrowing money that we think we might need, and then we would have to pay a percentage back, or I'm a little bit confused about some of that.
Mm-hmm.
I just need to understand that before I can vote.
Yes, sir. No, those are all very valid questions, and ones that I can assure you that Dr. Cheeseman and his staff were asking from the very get-go. Because I think we all initially took this as, that sounds too good to be true. And it was only through looking through some research and talking to other experts who are not financially invested in the agreement here, right? External people, including lawyers, who would say, yes, this is a real thing. It's a well-established program, and it's one that has been used in North Carolina by governmental entities previously and currently. So I can, with that input, say to you that I'm confident this is a real and legitimate project. As to what you'd be agreeing to, the contingency collaboration agreement is not a loan. What would be coming to the school district are the proceeds of this new market tax credit program, in which the federal government makes available a tax credit allocation. The investors invest in order to access the allocation. I'll leave it to their bean counters how that ultimately benefits them as a company. But this is not a loan. You're not borrowing money. You're receiving the proceeds out of this new market tax credit program the money that would be due to the vendor that is assisting with the project would come at the closing. So before you even get money, their share comes out of the money that they got, rather than from you on the back end. And so it's a 2.5% of the total allocation. You would end up with basically whatever the proceeds are minus that would then come to you to be put into the building.
Steve, TW,
Yes.
if they raise no dollars and no cents, what is the school district on the hook for?
My understanding is $0.
Okay.
So we're basically a glorified tax write-off for wealthy companies. Kind of.
Yeah.
So
I'll
your
I'll
big
read
banks
this
and
to
all
you.
that.
This is a line straight out of the agreement. This agreement is completely contingent on successfully closing a transaction on the client's behalf, or else this agreement is at no cost to the client. That's a
So-
quote from the, in bold in the agreement.
So if we were to compile the amount of money that we would like to do these extra things, we've got to bear in mind to reduce, let's say we want 3 million, but we've got to go ahead and take 2.5% out of that. So we don't want to commit to 3 million because we're not going to actually get 3 million from them,
You wouldn't
correct?
commit to anything until you got a dollar.
No, I meant when you price out, this is what we'd like to do, if we could get 3 million, we're, 2.5% of that 3 million, we're not gonna have, so we
$75,000.
don't need to be on the hook for that ourselves. We don't need to overprice something, correct?
Right, you need to stick to 97.5%.
And my understanding is our goal is to write a compelling story. You have to write the compelling story of what you would like to do. And then however much money that they receive in tax credits minus the 2.5, then you can try to achieve that. But in terms of the planning process, like you're saying, you don't want to overextend yourself. But they may not come back with 3 million. They may come back with 500,000. They might come back with 10 grand, right? You just don't know. So to that point is, if they don't come back with anything, you're not on the hook for
We're
a
not on
dime.
the hook for anything.
And this is exclusively capital funds.
To my understanding, is exclusively capital funds. I cannot use it to purchase land, and I cannot use it to purchase people.
And not only is it capital funds, it's specific to this project.
Right,
So
for the new school.
the investment is in this school construction project, not just capital funds generally.
This is something new that I'm not familiar with. I think there are probably a lot of us, but as far as the funding coming through to completion, is there enough experience out there in North Carolina or other states to show that there are no problems with this funding coming through to full completion of any project that is started? Do you understand my question?
I think so, and I want to answer it fairly and transparently that this is, as you said, this is new to a lot of us. This was new to me, which is why we've been in conversation with people who have worked on these projects. I think the honest answer is nothing is guaranteed in these areas. So I think if you went looking hard enough, you would find places where either the funding didn't come through, and so you didn't get charged for it, but you also didn't get the money. So I want to be fair to the board in that I'm not trying to sell this program to you, right? That this is not my product. What I'm saying to you is that should the board be interested in pursuing this funding, we have vetted this program. It is legitimate, and the agreement that we have worked on and negotiated with them protects the board as best we can against any of those eventualities, such as no funding coming through or an investor pulling out at a certain time in the process. But I would be remiss if I tried to give you some sort of guarantee that nothing could go wrong here.
I guess my question concerns if we were to start planning a project or come up with a dollar amount for a specific project, and we start planning and we hire, architectural help, and things like that, if we get out there with doing some planning work in this, are we confident that this type project or this type of, allocation coming to us or coming through is actually comes through to completion?
Well, I think you just write if what I understand it from, and the way I kind of read it, you write a concept paper and get basically a concept. You don't architect and design anything until the money and the funding is secured.
We don't spend any money.
We don't spend a dollar,
spend
you just
any-
write
right. Don't
a
spend what you don't
concept
have.
Right, don't spend any
of
money.
what you're doing.
Okay.
It's the way I read
wanna-
it.
As a matter of fact, that's exactly what happened with the Needs-Based Public School Capital Fund grant. You wrote an application, you had a design, and you did nothing else until you got that money.
Okay.
Daniel?
Like I say, I'm unfamiliar with this
Right.
whole process, so I want to make sure
you-
that we have a
Dan?
complete understanding.
The funding we've already been awarded for this project, would we have to exhaust and spend all that funding before we could tap into any funding that may be awarded through this project?
I think, Steve might be able to answer that, but my understanding is this is above and beyond what you have already settled on. Usually, this type of funding comes in for projects that were underfunded, that just didn't have enough to make the end. So I think, and Steve can correct me, but I believe that this is for some compelling story, something above what we already had slated to do. So I don't think this replaces your local funding.
Okay.
And this would not replace your state capital funds. Is that correct, Steve?
That is my understanding, and we have been very transparent with the vendor throughout that, y'all have between the needs-based public school grant and the county matching funding, you have what you need for the basic plan that you've laid out. Where this funding can come in is closing gaps in something that might have been cut in the design process to meet those budgets, or because of cost overruns, because as y'all know with construction, that is not uncommon, that costs actually overrun what we expect. And this, could serve as a bolstering. We had some conversations about whether receiving some of this might free up some of the county funding to be returned to the county to be spent at another time on a future school project. And I don't know that is a foreclosed possibility, but I also don't want to sell that as the reason why we do this. That's not going to be the story that they're going to be successful telling investors is quick invest in this project so the county can save the same money and spend it elsewhere. But that may be part of the conversation as well. But ultimately, again, this is the vendor believes based on their experience that they can get this funding for the district's school construction project. It will allow Dr. Cheeseman and his staff to explore some things that might not have been available to them under the current funding available. And again, it is, if they are unsuccessful, you don't pay them. But I agree with the question that was stated earlier that you need to be cognizant of what their fee is if it comes through, so that you don't end up budgeting the full amount and end up not getting what you thought you were going to get.
Carolyn?
We actually have Ms. Gibbs in the audience here, and I think it would probably take her less than a week to spend an enormous amount of money on our exceptional children, which Eastern Elementary and John Cotton Taylor have rather large population of children with very special, extreme needs. And I know within the new school, we've allowed the space, but that's about it. We have, if you ever, when I first came on the school board 12 years ago, I did a lot of deep diving into the many different programs that are offered to exceptional children. And although we meet the basic needs, to be able to create an avenue of learning for these children that are nonverbal, that only can move in a wheelchair by blowing into a tube, and some of the extreme handicaps that they face and the challenges, I I personally would love to see us go in the direction where we're trying to make that space for the populations of those two schools the very best it can be for a learning opportunity, even if that meant, I'm not trying to take it away from the regular classroom, but Ms. Gibbs, am I right? Are there a lot of things that we're just not financially able to tap into for our exceptional children? I know you do.
So I guess we're at the point of where the board want to vote to go ahead and go forward, or what? Go ahead.
So there's questions that were asked tonight. So are you asking us to move forward?
It is an action item.
And if there's questions, to get those answered first before we, is there like a two-stage moving forward, getting questions answered and then move forward? Or you want us to move forward to go for the whole thing, which I don't think I'm prepared for?
All we're looking at tonight is agreeing that we want them to go try to find money.
Collaboration.
We're not agreeing on what we want to spend it on. We're not agreeing on what the projects are going to be. You just agreeing tonight, do you want this company to go try to raise money for you to receive? And that's it.
And in the contract, there's 2 signatures on it, and this is the first time it's being brought to us.
Okay.
That's correct.
Well, Daniel had a good question, I thought, that, is this before or after the money? We need questions like that answered before, we're gonna say, okay, we're moving forward.
Let me address Ms. Davis. Ms. Davis, by the authority charged and invested in me by the state of North Carolina and Beaufort County Schools, I am allowed to sign contracts on behalf of the Board of Education when I believe specifically it's risk-free, which I believe this one is. And I sought advice from your school board attorney, which is why I signed it on your behalf.
And if I could help out there, the very last line of the contract specifically says, and this is the one that Dr. Cheeseman signed, this agreement is subject to and fully contingent upon formal board approval by vote in a duly called public meeting, whether to move forward or not. And that we needed to do that by February the 28th. So Dr. Cheeseman signed to say, I think this is a good agreement to move forward with, but my signature does not hold if the board doesn't vote to ratify it.
Correct.
Basically. And so the board, this agreement means nothing unless the board votes to approve it. And if the board votes to approve it, then they would move forward, and you could rescind it during the process. Now, the farther we go in the process, the more likely it is that there's some money owed. But if you came back in 3 weeks and said, you know what, I've done some research, this is a terrible idea, you could rescind it at that point. And if it's early enough in the process, you would still not owe anything.
So there's a lot of if there, since it doesn't have to be processed February 28th, you said?
It's what's on the last one, February 28th, 2020.
Okay, there's no reason we can't table it till the next meeting and just let us kind of look at it, because this company is how old?
How old was the company?
How old is the company? That's a good question. They're not new.
I believe they're like 5 to 7 years old, is that right?
I don't know.
With 30 years experience between them?
So all I can tell you is what's on their website, which is that they say they have 30 years of experience in this in investment work, and specifically within the new market tax credit. I don't know.
Right.
But,
I think it's a great idea.
So the other thing that can happen, and they've offered to come and talk to you themselves, is and we can arrange for I think, and Dr. Cheeseman, tell me if I'm getting too far out on the diving board myself here, but I believe that they have offered to come and present to the board as well.
And I think it's important to not wait too late. I understand what you're saying, Ms. Davis, but if we wait too late, then we have put the burden on them to quickly come up with what we would submit and how much it's going to cost, and that takes time too. Is the February 28th the definite deadline on a submission?
That is the deadline in the contract. I will share that one of the reasons that they asked for us to do this tonight, even though we have until February 28th, is because they have this investment conference that meets in the middle of February, where without this agreement, they will not be able to make a case for this particular project. And they felt like that was a really good opportunity to get the ball rolling. So that is the only time pressure. You are not required to approve it tonight, but if we don't approve it tonight, they will miss that particular opportunity to begin sounding out investors in a environment where this is the focus. And that was their reasoning for trying to get us to approve this tonight if we could.
Again, it goes back to them being a young company, and I'm not so sure that I'm sold on agreeing to this tonight.
Steve, did they successfully do this with Jones County?
I do not believe this vendor did it with Jones County, but Jones County used the New Market Tax Credits program, yes.
Thank you.
Which is a great idea.
I believe that this one in Northampton are this particular company's first projects within North Carolina specifically. But the program, the New Market Tax Credits program, has been used by the Jones County schools and by other local governments in North Carolina previously.
Donald?
Mr. Rawson, you said that this could be rescinded at any time?
The agreement to pursue the funding can be rescinded anytime up to closing. Once obviously they close on the transaction, then there's an expectation from the investor that's going forward, and they have expended the
So basically,
the
they're
things, right? But yes, you would have some time here. And for example, you could approve this contingency, and that's literally the title of it, contingency collaboration agreement, tonight, and then have their vendor come and present at your next meeting to answer a lot of your technical questions that I simply don't have the answers to, because I went into law instead of investment banking. But I'm happy to try to get them to you all. Again, I'm not trying to sell you on this program, just to tell you we've done our due diligence. And if you feel that this is appropriate for your school district, I feel comfortable as your attorney saying that this is legal and legitimate. If you want to hear more from them, I'm sure they would be willing to come talk to you. But if we want to give them the chance to get started at this conference in 2 weeks, then tonight is it benefits their process if they have this in hand after tonight.
It benefits them, and that's what the commission is for, but we have questions. And thank you, Attorney Rawson.
Do you want to table or you want to motion?
Well, since we can rescind it, and we don't pay anything if they don't get money anyway, why don't we just go ahead and approve it and let them start and then come present to us, and if we don't like what they say, we rescind it.
You don't get, it appears to me that they're gonna go after a promissory donation for the project, and they're not going to get the funds until closing, is what it sounds to me. They're not gonna actually, it's basically like me promising to give X number of dollars to a project, and at the closing, I gotta come up with a check or not. Is that right? They go around to 10 different people. They go around to every board member. They're gonna pony up X number of dollars, and then at closing, if we don't pony up, we don't get the money, period.
That is my understanding, and I would say, and I specifically asked them about kind of at what point can the board pull out with no expenses? And what they said was, generally speaking, it's closing date. The closer you get to closing, the more likely it is that there's some expense that needs to be paid. But closing is the target. So, if you were getting concerned, earlier would be better in terms of saying, hey, you know what, we're not into this. But, so for example, if you were to approve tonight, have them come present at your next meeting to make sure you're comfortable, you'd be well within your time to have no issues saying, hey, we're not happy about this. If you approve it tonight, or if you approve it at your next meeting, and have them come in 2 months once they've got investors lined up and are taking positive steps toward closing, there's more risk of having some inherent expenses involved.
Page 6 of 10, second paragraph explains that.
Just looks to me like there's a wide gap between what due diligence has been done to this date. It's concerning to me. However, the board feels, if they feel if they feel comfortable approving with the fact that we can rescind, but this lack of due diligence that's been done, the open questions that we have is just very concerning to me.
Why don't we just move the table it to the 18th then? You just make the motion. And you get them here.
If they come here.
Well, I would say,
They'll come.
I would say in that case, we need to be tasked to ask any questions and get any questions asked so that when we come to this next meeting, we're going to be prepared to vote for it up or down.
Right.
I agree with that, Donald. I think
And also, I was going to
can't kick the can
add,
down the road, or you're going to lose the opportunity.
Yeah.
Carolyn, I was just going to add too, just why couldn't we poll everybody tonight to kind of see where we were? I know we're hearing some of it, but I'm at this mindset, and I understand what Gary and what Stacy is saying, but if there's no, here, my only concern is this: if we approve it tonight to move forward, based on what Mr. Rawson is saying, could we get the representative here at a reasonable time before it's too late for us to say no?
He's shaking his head, yes. He shook his head, yes.
Okay. Can I make a motion to table it to the next meeting? Anybody want to second that?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right.
Thank you. Move on to the next item.
All right, we got to go back up to 4.4. Thank you, Steve. Sorry.
Thank you.
All right,
Thanks,
y'all have a good
Steve.
evening.
We're moving back up to 4.4. You got an attachment marked down, technical correction to a policy. And it is line 6, I think, down here. Go, Mark.
Yes, sir. So this is our policy on student domicile. This policy, when it was originally written, I'm told in the year 2006, 2007, there was a change in legislation that affected the 06-07 school year and the 07-08 school year about student domicile, especially students with disabilities and where they would be enrolled in the system. That was only in effect for those 2 years. When we're meeting with parents sometimes and we talk about student domicile, it's been brought to our attention, a lot of times parents ask questions about this particular paragraph because it's out of date. So there hasn't been a change to any of the rest of the policy, and the only reason this paragraph was in here was to address just those 2 school years. So it's no longer in effect. It was just to make a transition from one way of doing business to another way of doing business. So for first reading only, what we're asking is we would just strike this because it tends to confuse our parents when we share it with folks, and it no longer applies. And it makes it look as though we have something in our policy that's way out of date, which frankly it is at this point.
All right, anybody got any questions?
I just wonder if anybody's got any objection going ahead and moving this to an action item.
Making a motion, we'll make it
No,
forward.
I make a motion, we rescind the rules of second reading and vote on it tonight.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Now make a motion, we approve it.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
4.5, policy 7550, absences due to weather, inclement weather. You have an attachment. Dr. Cheeseman.
I was asked to bring this to the board.
So, you want to go?
Well, yes, I guess. I've had so many phone calls and texts and emails from employees at different levels, classified, certified. And there seemed to be a lot of, well, not a lot. There seemed to be some misinformation out there about how we were handling this. And then there seemed to be some employees that, for whatever reason, just did not know the policy. And so I asked that this get put on there because my concern was last Wednesday, or maybe it was the Wednesday before, was not a day that anybody needed to be out on the road driving. Our sheriff said, stay off the roads. And yet, we had it as an optional day for our teachers. Even had this, and I think Terry did too, had someone say, you did not feel safe in holding your meeting on Tuesday night, but you felt safe enough to tell us we had to come to work or use a day on Wednesday. So those are some of the different arguments, and I've been very vague in my answers in that we will discuss it at our next board meeting. So my request not only is that we discuss it, and I know some of y'all may have heard from parents and teachers, and certified, classified staff members, is that going forward, we need to make this policy not just buried down in all of our policies, but I want it to be very clear to our employees what the policy is, why it is what it is, and do we need to make any changes. Some of this goes in accordance with, state funding, I understand that, but I'm hoping that I can get some guidance from Dr. Cheeseman and Mr. Doan on what we can do going forward. If there's anything we can do going backwards, I don't know that there is. The time, there were some that were able to show up that had four-wheel drives and they showed up to work. So if you said, well, let's go back and pay those that weren't able to get there, then what are you telling the person that made the effort and the sacrifice to get there? So it's a skinny line that we're going to cross, and I'm just asking the whole board for guidance, because even as late as 9:30 last night, I had 7 different texts and emails on employees that were very upset in the way it was handled. That's basically it from me.
All right. Do anybody else have
I
any
got
questions?
some questions,
Go
but I
ahead.
mean, let him go ahead. He
You-
looks like he wants to say something, so I don't want to get ahead of him.
No, he was good.
Okay.
Yeah.
My question was, it's been said, I know in the past, that either it's optional day, so they can come in. If they choose not to come in, they use time. What time is it they're using? I know I've been on the board long enough, I should know this now, but it's very confusing because, as I understand, we have certified 10-month, we have certified 12, we have classified the same, we have hourly. There's so many different pieces that this touches, it's kind of hard.
And
So-
honestly, some of them don't know which one they are.
Oh, I get it. So that's a simple question, if you
Sure.
don't mind, Mark. So when we're saying build up time and use it, which time is it they're using? We have annual, sick, personal. Is there other time?
If you're a classified employee,
Okay.
it's possible, and it gets complicated,
Oh, it's complicated.
because if you're a classified employee that, generally speaking, you don't earn overtime, you earn comp time. That is not true necessarily. Now, it's classified employees.
I didn't think the state recognized that word.
Well, for classified folks, they do,
Okay,
but not for
gotcha.
certified.
Gotcha.
So for our classified folks, look, if I'm a teacher assistant, for example, though, but if I also drive a bus, then I don't get comp time, I'm gonna get paid overtime. But if I'm a teacher assistant that doesn't drive a bus, could be the same thing with school nutrition, custodian, it varies on where I fall, but I earn comp, it's possible for me to earn comp time. If I'm a teacher, certified employee, on an optional workday, if I'm sick, I have to have a doctor's note per state policy, so I could theoretically use sick leave. Generally speaking, I build up vacation or annual leave, I could use that. Or I could use personal leave if I didn't have annual leave or sick leave to use. What I can't do is, if the makeup time is used, then that would have to be something going forward. So, and I find myself in this argument a lot because as a former teacher, I remember all the times I worked at night, weekends, ball games, all the things teachers do, but I can't store that up and use it later. That isn't recognized as making anything up. That's recognized as part of the job. So and we as a school system ran into this in, I can't remember which hurricane it was, but I want to say it was 2017, 2016, we were out for about 2 weeks. And there was also, it helped that there was a state of emergency in North Carolina and a lot of other underlying conditions. But there are, depending on the type of employee you are, generally speaking, there are different types of paid leave that you can use. Or if you don't have any paid leave, I haven't worked here long enough, that I might not get paid at all if I don't work.
Okay, can I just say this? Did you think all day of that answer just so you could confuse me more? Let me ask you a different way. Let's see if we can skinny this down just a little bit.
skinny
If
it
I
down.
am a certified teacher and been here 20 years, and I've built up all kinds of time, and we have an optional day and they don't come in, what do they have the option to use? Just that teacher, don't worry about anybody else.
Annual
What
leave,
do they use?
they would use annual leave or personal leave.
Annual leave or personal. I get sick something, we weren't sick.
That's right.
So I
Or,
get-
but I mean, in theory, if you were and you had a doctor's
Okay,
note.
so annual leave and personal leave.
Yes, sir.
Second question, because I got 3 here. Second question, if I am a TA in a school considered, what do they have the option to do?
If I'm a TA that earns comp time, I could use comp time. Let's say I don't drive a bus, I don't do anything else, then I do actually earn comp time if I
Okay.
worked over.
Okay.
Or I can use annual leave, or I could use sick leave if I had a doctor's note.
Okay, probably
They-
not,
But
probably not sick.
TAs do not earn
Probably
personal
not.
leave, so that's
Right,
not an
okay.
option for them.
Can you stop right there a second?
Yes.
So if you're a TA that drives a bus
Right.
and there's no school for students, if you don't, if you drive a bus first thing in the morning and at the end of the school day, obviously, you're not driving a bus because you're not transporting students, so you're not gonna get paid for that, correct?
That is correct.
But you still need to, on your own, go to school if you wanna get paid for that day.
Or use some type of paid leave.
And if you're a beginning teacher or TA, it's very different, correct?
Certainly, your amount of leave is based on years of service, so the fewer years of service you have, the fewer amount of leave that you've earned. That is correct.
Like I
Okay,
said, they don't even know sometimes.
So
Okay,
if you're a beginning teacher,
yeah, that's what my third
started
question
August
is.
of '24, all right, so you're 6 months in your job. You're a 10-month employee, correct? And we had 3 snow days, optional work days. How much leave do they get from August to the middle and
Right.
to now? And then if it's an optional day, they come to work, they get paid. But if they stayed home, they don't get paid. Am I right?
That's correct.
All right. So how
So-
much leave do they get?
So the state, and I can pull up the chart, but if memory serves, it takes 5 years in North Carolina before you earn more leave than we automatically have to put in the calendar per the calendar law. So we have 10 annual days. We take 5 over Christmas, and we take 5 at Easter. As a beginning teacher or any beginning employee, for the first 5 years of your employment, you're going to earn just enough to cover those days. So if you don't really have an option for optional work days in a calendar, you work or you don't get paid, because you only earn enough leave to cover. Now, in theory, if you said, look, I've got to have the money now, I'll use my leave now, and then come spring break, I'll be missing some time. That's also, you could do that. Most folks don't elect to do that, but they're not gonna, if you're a new employee, it's gonna take you, if memory serves, 5 years, I believe, to build up enough time so that you have more than enough to cover what we're
And that's
mandated to place.
State.
Yes, that's the state, that's how the state determines how you earn leave.
So when we have closed down district-wide for any weather event, they just don't get an opportunity to make that day up at all? How does that work?
So when you're closed, completely closed, you have to still follow into the 215-day rule, meaning that you can't have 214, you can't have 216. So if I completely close it, then I'm usually trying to tack it on at the end of the year to get back to the 215 rule.
I understand that, but if we're completely closed, do those beginning teachers who have no time built up in the first 5 years, our classified staff or bus drivers, if you make the decision to close the district for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, they just don't have an opportunity to get paid at all, right? Is that what you're saying? When you close it district-wide, they don't get paid?
And to the point of that, no matter what decision you make, whether it's closed or it's optional, there is going to be a category of employees that will not get paid, period. And it's usually your bus drivers.
Right.
A lot of times it's your school nutrition people. It may be some of your custodians, maybe some of your maintenance, depending where they are. So in short, the decision to come to an optional workday is to allow people to have choice. That is the fairest decision to the most amount of people possible, because of all choices presented to me, there's always a category of people who won't get paid. For example, 12-month employees, such as Ms. Gibbs in the back, right, and/or Norris Parker, and/or some of your district-wide instructional coaches. Well, if I close the district, they're 12-month employees. They have nowhere to make up the time, even if I schedule another day at the end of the year, because by contract, they were supposed to be here anyway. So then they automatically have to take their leave. You swipe it from them. And so in a bad way of saying it, you're taking it from them. So in short, you're trying to find the decision that favors, in fairness, the greatest amount of people to make the decision about their own safety. We say that with kids around fog outside or rain or whatever it might be at times. But for those people who want the option to potentially come in, that gives them the option. And so closing the system also closes out people from potentially being paid. Moving that day also closes out 12-month people. And so somebody and many people may lose no matter what happens in the snow day. And that's the hard part about it, and that's why I went optional. So people could figure out a way, if they felt safe enough to come, that the building would be open for them to come.
And my next question is, what kind of communication went out to our admin teams so that they could correctly communicate with their staff? Because I think...
I sent a direct message to all principals. I may have sent it to APs, but to all principals, that Beaufort County Schools was going to work or operate under an optional workday with a 3-hour delay for anybody trying to come in. But I did that for each day, watching the weather to see how it would change, whether it would worsen or get better. So I communicated directly with principals.
And there seemed to be a little bit of, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus. I'm so thankful for everybody that is willing to work within the education system. It just seemed like across the board, there wasn't a consistent communication. I'm not saying from you all. I'm just saying that some of our employees, especially some that contacted me, didn't seem to understand how these rules applied to them. So what I would love to see is, going forward, I know our hands are tied into how much we can tweak this policy based on the funding from the state. But I want to make sure that all of our employees understand where they fall in this so they can make decisions for their family. And I had a classified employee who lived way beyond state roads. And to get into work was going to make her get in her little bitty car and travel on roads that had not been scraped. But she, as a single mom with 3 children, she said, I can't afford to not go in to work.
That's what I'm thinking about. I mean, you've declared the roads.
And it broke my heart. If I had the money, I'd give it to her myself.
Declared the roads to be too unsafe for students to come. But, you know, even though they're unsafe, you can come to work anyway. And get in your car and do whatever wheelies you have to do along the way.
That same employee, though, am I right, a classified employee, would have still had, if you closed the district, had to use leave for the day. So, and if you don't have leave, you still don't get paid.
So on January 21st, Tuesday at 11 a.m., I sent a message to all principals that said, weather update. No school for students on Wednesday, January 22nd, 2025. Optional workday with a 3-hour delay for all employees tomorrow. Thumbs up came back from principals. That's how they confirm it. Mr. Doan then clarified, as long as a certified employee works in the building at all, it counts as a whole day. Not true for classified folks, as we've already discussed. It went on to talk about 12-month individuals. Principals, thumbs up, so they understood it. Wednesday, January 22nd at 12:08 p.m., no school for students. On Thursday, January 23rd, optional workday with a 3-hour delay for all employees. Early College High School will operate on the satellite day. Did the same thing, January 23rd at 9:28. Let's see, principals responded to that. So, in short, I think what we could do at the beginning of the school year, and even more so now, is ask principals to have conversations with their employees around the beginning of the year, all the things they walk through at the beginning of the year in terms of their beginning teacher meetings, faculty meetings, whatever it is. But when I'm charged in this role to make the decision that's best for as many employees as possible in terms of fairness, that is for employees, not just teachers. That's why I even state it that way. It's not just for teachers. And so districts around us do what they feel is best, and some closed, some went optional.
Why didn't we consider a remote day for Wednesday?
Great question. So the state of North Carolina gives you a remote day, or gives you several remote days to choose from. But the state of North Carolina also puts in parameters that they reserve the right to audit you on your remote day.
Right.
And in that remote, they like to see the plan that a student would actually be engaged for 7.5 hours a day, including all of your employees. And you are subject to come under an audit around what that looks like. And should you fail that audit, then you'd have to use your local monies to pay back any of your state funds in that regard. That's my understanding. So in collaboration with other superintendents in the area who've experienced that, then I opted to stay on the optional workday versus going remote, knowing that during COVID, 1,083 of our students did not have access, and also knowing that I did not believe our students on a snow day, and even some of our educators, might have access to be remote. And so I made the decision fair enough.
Once out of 4 years, you tell a kid he's got to sit in there with
Right.
a laptop,
Right.
you're gonna have somebody fighting.
So remote days applies to the students, but not to the staff.
The remote days can apply to the staff as long as they're engaged in 7.5 hours of work, none of which counts towards the 1,025
Well,
hours of instructional time.
I got a question.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I just have one question.
All right.
Mr. Dome,
Yes, ma'am.
when does these people never learn this when they come in to get a job?
Well, I'm not sure I should say this out loud, but I cover this when you're hired, but apparently I need to do a better job
So,
for our new employees.
I got a question.
How
Since
many
we,
times are we dealing with snow days?
once every 5 years. So I got a quick
I don't
question.
care if it ain't but 10 days out of the
I got a
whole
quick
5.
question.
I'm talking about when you come to get a job, do you not get the information about the job?
Yes,
That's
ma'am.
my question.
Where is that disseminated from?
If
From
you,
you, of course.
if you go to our website and you go
Yes.
under the departments, the Human Resources Department, and from there, you look at our benefits page, along with all of our other pages under HR, are where you find your details about your employment status and leave, the links to the state benefits manual.
So it's not in a packet that you give
so-
them. If they have to go to the website and research to find out how it affects them, is
Maybe
what
the
you're saying.
principals should remind them.
So-
of that.
First of all,
I was getting ready to say I'm gonna make some enemies, but I was gonna ask the principals here if they have any particular input on them, since you deal directly with most of the staff.
So,
Mr. Chair, if I may.
No comment?
hang on, I got one quick question. I got one quick question. All right, you declared a remote day. Let's say hypothetically, you declared a remote day. What happens to your classified staff that day? They're still gonna have to use leave, correct?
Correct. If you were to have a remote instruction day, as Dr. Cheeseman pointed out, that doesn't count towards our 1,025 hours.
I thought I was right there, but I
Yeah,
just wanted to
but
put
it
it
wouldn't-
out
there's
there.
no-
So
there's no such
there-
thing as
there's going
remote
to
for
be
a classified
demographic
folks.
that's not there. Daniel, you asked for the floor.
So, I guess first and foremost, just a couple things I want to point out from what I've observed and read in policy 7550. There is no win-win situation for everybody here. No matter what we do, somebody's going to be out. So, everyone I think needs to obviously be covered, whether you're classified, whether you're certified, how this applies to you in an inclement weather situation. Also, everybody's responsible for their own personal safety. I think as a board, as leadership, we need to be mindful to what benefits our employees the most, and that's what we need to try to practice. If that's a closure, if that's an optional workday, I think those are just important things we need to keep in mind. But I received some calls on this policy very early, as soon as school was closed, what it was going to be. I'm probably not the right person to talk to about inclement weather. I have to work in inclement weather. It doesn't matter what happens.
Me and Daniel had this
I
conversation.
would
We go to work
prefer
no
you
matter
not
what.
be on the
I was out
road.
at
But
7 o'clock
I do
in the
think it's
morning.
important we cover this with all of our employees and how it impacts them. And I think that's the most confusing part is classified, unclassified, TA, bus driver. Somebody's going to be out. We just need to make sure we enforce what the policy is.
And there is a polar vortex out there that they're predicting in about 10 days.
All right.
So my request is that we share this
Prior
policy
to that.
with the staff again
He's good.
to quiet.
Okay.
There's a lot of anxiety right now.
All right, he's got it.
Yeah.
He said he would take care of it.
All righty.
So now we're jumping to 5.2, now that 5.1's done. This is the plan that we have all seen. We went away from, we went back, and then we went back to, or it's back on the table tonight. As most of you are all aware, because I think everybody was at the meeting, we are I'm gonna update you on that right here. As of this afternoon, right before I walked in here, the 4 acres of land that we are purchasing from the city will officially be the Beaufort County Schools property tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock when me and Dr. Cheeseman go and sign the document. So that'll be done. So this plan that's in front of you now turns the school back, does not move, Ms. Godfrey, does not move technology. It doesn't move any maintenance, it doesn't move anybody. It still fits back in the blueprint. Takes that little corner for the retainment pond. Nothing's changed from the original. Only thing we need to do is have a vote to go back to that piece.
Move approval.
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. And another quick update while we got it, Dr. Cheeseman sent y'all a link. There is a camera out there, and it also has approved safety devices. If you're gonna stop by, there is they got their trailer set up, their construction trailer and check-in station over on I don't know what that road's called over there, off the top of my head.
Backside.
Yeah, it's on the backside, but their construction trailer set up. There was 3 excavators out there yesterday when I drove by, because I was in town and I drove by there to see what was going on. So you're going to see dirt move fairly quickly.
I had a student that is at Eastern, I saw him yesterday. I almost went and found Donald and Charles, because they were in Walmart also, but this little student who knew me came up to me and said, knows me, and said, Miss Walker, I'd give you $5 if I could ride a piece of equipment. And I said, baby, it's gonna take more than $5 for me to get you back there. But the kids are already excited.
Okay. Donald?
I was just gonna say, and if we go by there and visit, we might wanna wear our hard hats.
Yeah, it's got all that stuff in
Today,
it,
but-
so.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
5.3, audit approval. Dr. Cheeseman, we've had it for over a month now. So because we had to kick the last meeting down the road. So we got the audit approval. I don't think you got anything else. The auditors approved it, and no findings. Anybody got any questions?
I'm still looking at the audit. There's some deferments and things that I'm trying to make sense of. And I don't feel like I can make the decisions that I need to make in the future, without getting a better grasp on that. I've not been here for a lot of the other board meetings. I've not seen a lot of the minutes except to say, this is what's happened, this is what was agreed on. And I'm sort of a numbers girl. Can we table this one more time, please?
It needs to go.
This
We
has
need
got to
get
go
that.
tonight.
Yeah.
Ms. Davis, I'd be happy to have you come in and sit with our finance officer and I, the way Mr. Carlton has.
Okay.
Let me just, I did request this initially, and Dr. Cheeseman and Christie were kind enough to take their time to explain to me some different things. The audit report clearly states on the first couple of pages, and that's the way all audits work, that they look at major categories and they do sampling of transactions. My concern was, and what I was asking most of my questions about, and I did get satisfactory answers in every case, was about the internal controls that were in place with regard to transfers, disbursements, transactions, approvals, and things like that. And I did get satisfactory answers on those things. I think there might have been, I had one question still about the litigation statement that's in there, but I was told that litigation statement, that there is pending litigation, goes back for years, as I understand it. There may be some of the new members that might want an explanation of that. But as far as the internal controls and situations that I was looking for, I got some real good answers, and I appreciate Matthew's time and Christie's time in taking care of that. But I think there may be some new members that might want to understand a little bit, just a brief summary of what that pending litigation is.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Sure. I appreciate you sharing that.
Okay.
No other questions? I move approval.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? All right. 25, 26 school calendar, we've had that on the thing for two times. Anybody got any more questions for Mr. Doon on that one?
I'm glad that in 2026 that Good Friday is a holiday.
It was a
Remember,
good-
I asked about that last year.
it's a Good Friday this year.
2025 is optional, 2026 is a holiday. I was glad to see that. Good Friday.
Yeah. Do you want to move approval?
Yes, I would like to
Okay.
move to approve that.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All
Do you ne-
opposed?
Will that cover both calendars? Are you good
Yes.
enough for that to cover both of them?
Fall 24 policy updates, we've had these for a while. Any more questions, for Dr. Cheeseman on them?
Move approval.
Can I just interrupt real quick?
Yeah, sure.
I'm asking for your approval with the exclusion of policy 6140 that requires us to have a meeting with our SHAC committee before I can bring this to you. And so in short, I'm asking for you to approve policies as presented with the exclusion of 6140 so I can bring that back to you.
That's fine.
He's
Mr.
got to meet
Chairman,
with the
where are we
SHAC
at?
committee. No, what you said, SHAC committee?
Where are we at, Mr. Chairman? I'm sorry.
We're at 5.5 policy update 2024. We've had it for going on 3 months.
Yep. It's been carried over and over.
So we got a motion on the floor
I
from,
move approval according
with
to.
exception.
With the
Right,
exception, I
right.
second it.
No problem.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? 5.6, field trip approval. Dr. Cheeseman. P.S. Jones.
Yeah, it's a P.S. Jones Middle School's field trip to New York City, March 13th through the 15th, 6 male students, 6 female students, 5 female adults via charter bus. Also, P.S. Jones Middle School 8th grade trip to King's Dominion in Virginia, May 16th, 1-day trip, 5 male students. No, that's backwards.
Why are there
It should-
75?
It's backwards. It should say 75 male students, 5 adults, 75 female students, 5 adults.
I read that, I said, that's a lot of adults going to have a good time.
That's more than one bus.
Yeah. Now I got a motion to approve.
Approve with the correction.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Mr. Williams.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you all for coming tonight. Congratulations.